Tonight, you might open your fridge and feel like food is simple. Cold air spills out, bright packages stare back, and in less than 10 seconds, your ancient hunger has to choose between a yogurt cup, leftover pizza, sliced fruit, a bottle of soda, and something called protein cereal. But the real answer is far stranger. Because for most of human history, food was not a choice in a kitchen. Food was a landscape. Food was a season. Food was a risk your body had to solve before the sun went down. So what did ancient humans actually eat? The honest answer is not steak. It is not salad. It is not one perfect cave person diet hiding in the past waiting to fix the modern world. The honest answer is much more powerful. Your ancestors ate whatever kept them alive. That sounds obvious, but it changes everything. Because the human body was not shaped by one menu. It was shaped by flexibility. Your brain learned to look at the world and ask a very old question. Can this become energy? A berry bush could be dinner. A trapped animal could be dinner. Honey stolen from angry bees could be dinner. A root dug from hard ground could be dinner. A shellfish cracked open beside the coast could be dinner. A half-burned piece of meat beside a fire could be dinner. And if one of those failed, your ancestors needed another answer fast. That is the first thing modern diet stories often miss. Ancient eating was not a brand. It was not clean. It was not simple. It was messy, seasonal, local, and sometimes desperate. One group near an icy plain might depend heavily on reindeer, horses, or mammoth fat. Another group near a warm coast might eat fish, shellfish, birds, eggs, plants, and seaweed. Another group in a dry place might survive on tubers, seeds, acorns, wild grasses, and whatever animals could be found. Same species, different worlds, different plates. So when someone says your ancestors ate mostly meat, the right question is this: which ancestors? Where? In what season? During what climate? With what tools? Because the past was not one place, it was millions of kitchens without walls. Scientists can sometimes see those lost meals in bones. One method is called stable isotope analysis. That sounds complicated, but the simple idea is this. Your bones and teeth carry chemical clues from the food you ate. Different foods leave slightly different chemical fingerprints. Researchers such as Michael Richards use these clues to study Neanderthals and early modern humans in Ice Age Europe. In many cold European sites, the signal suggests a heavy reliance on large land animals. That makes sense. In open, cold environments, plants were limited for much of the year, while big herbivores carried dense calories in muscle, marrow, and fat. But even that does not mean ancient humans lived on plain meat. Protein alone can be dangerous if it becomes too much of the diet. Your body also needs fat and carbohydrates. So a successful hunter did not just want a lean steak. Your ancestors wanted marrow. They wanted organs. They wanted brains. They wanted fat around bones and under skin. Why? Because fat is concentrated energy. In a world with no grocery store, fat was treasure. A modern person might trim it off. An ancient person might see survival. But there is another side of the story. For a long time, plants were easier to miss in the archaeological record. Bones can last. Stone tools can last. A berry does not usually leave a dramatic fossil. A roasted tuber does not stand in a museum and announce itself. So meat can become louder in the evidence simply because bones are louder than leaves. Then scientists started looking in stranger places. One of those places is ancient dental calculus. That is, hardened plaque on teeth. It sounds unpleasant, but it can trap tiny remains of meals for thousands of years. Research by Amanda Henry and colleagues found plant microfossils, including starch grains, in Neanderthal dental calculus. In plain English, tiny food traces stuck in old teeth suggested that Neanderthals were eating plant foods too. Some of those starch grains showed signs of heat damage, which suggests cooking or processing. So the picture changed. The ancient menu was not just a spear and a carcass, it was also roots, seeds, nuts, fruits, grasses, and cooked plants when the environment allowed it. Does that surprise you? It should, Because modern culture often imagines ancient humans as muscular hunters standing proudly over meat. That image is not completely wrong, but it is incomplete. It leaves out the hands digging. It leaves out the children gathering. It leaves out the older people knowing where the hidden tubers grow. It leaves out the quiet skill of remembering which plant is safe, which one is bitter, which one needs soaking, and which one can make you sick. In many foraging societies, gathering is not a side activity. It is knowledge. It is memory. It is survival passed from body to body. The Hadza people of Tanzania are often studied by anthropologists because some Hadza communities still practice foraging today. They are not living fossils. They are modern people living in the present. But their food patterns can help scientists think carefully about how flexible human foraging can be. Anthropologist Frank Marlowe and Julia Burbesque described major Hadza foods as tubers, berries, meat, baobab, and honey. That list alone destroys the cartoon version of the ancient diet. There is meat, yes, but there is also sugar from honey. There are tough underground roots. There is fruit. There are seeds inside baobab pulp. There is seasonal change. And honey matters more than most modern people expect. Your brain loves sweetness for a reason. In a supermarket, sweetness is cheap and everywhere. In the wild, sweetness could mean rare energy. Honey is not just dessert, it is a jackpot. Imagine climbing, smoking out bees, getting stung, and still deciding the reward is worth it. That tells you something about the ancient mind. Your craving for sweet food did not begin in a candy aisle. It began in a world where sweetness was a signal. Here is energy. Get it while it exists. But ancient food was not only about calories, it was also about danger. Every bite carried questions. Is this poisonous? Is it rotten? Did another animal touch it? Will this plant hurt your stomach? Is the meat fresh enough? Did someone else in your group eat it and live? Your sense of disgust may partly come from this old problem. Disgust is not just politeness, it is a protective alarm. It helps your body avoid infection, parasites, and spoiled food. That is why a bad smell can stop you before your thoughts do. Your nose reacts faster than your philosophy. Your ancestors did not need a nutrition label to know that something was wrong. They needed smell. They needed memory. They needed other people. Food was social information. If someone in your group knew which berries were safe, that knowledge could save your life. If someone knew when animals migrated, that knowledge could feed children. If someone knew how to crack bones for marrow, find shellfish at low tide, or cook a hard root until it softened, that knowledge became more valuable than strength alone. So ancient eating was never just eating. It was teaching. It was watching. It was sharing. It was arguing. It was trust. And this is where fire changes the story. Harvard primatologist Richard Wrangham is known for the cooking hypothesis. The basic idea is simple. Cooking can make food easier to chew and easier to digest, which may give the body more usable energy from the same raw ingredients. This does not mean one campfire instantly created modern humans. Evolution is slower and messier than that. But cooking may have helped human ancestors unlock calories from meat and plants in a new way. A raw tuber can be tough. A cooked tuber can be softer. Raw meat takes effort. Cooked meat can be easier to chew. Heat can reduce some toxins and kill some dangerous microbes. Fire did not just warm the night, it changed what counted as food. Think about that. A flame can turn something difficult into something edible. A spark can change digestion. A meal can become softer, safer, and more shareable. Around a fire, food also becomes a gathering point. The day's search turns into a night's story. The body eats, but the group also bonds. Your dinner table may be a very old campfire wearing modern furniture. And then there is the strange modern twist. Your ancient hunger was built for scarcity, but your modern world is built for access. For most of your past, food demanded effort. It had distance inside it. A berry had to be found. A root had to be dug. An animal had to be tracked. Honey had to be stolen from insects that could fight back. Even food that looked easy was surrounded by walking, searching, carrying, remembering, and risk. Today, energy waits in a drawer. It glows from a delivery app. It sits in a vending machine. It comes wrapped, salted, sweetened, softened, and ready before your body has done any work to earn it. That mismatch is not a moral failure. It is an ancient system placed inside a strange, new environment. Hermann Poncer studied Hadza energy expenditure using a method called doubly labeled water. That method tracks how much energy the body uses across daily life. His work suggested something counterintuitive. Hadza foragers are far more physically active than many people in industrial societies, but after accounting for body size, total daily energy expenditure can be surprisingly similar. The lesson is not that movement does not matter. Movement matters for health. The deeper point is that your body manages energy in complex ways. Modern food problems cannot be explained only by laziness. Your world changed the food side of the equation. It made calories dense, cheap, soft, and constant. Your ancestors had cravings that made sense. Crave fat, because fat was rare. Crave sweetness, because ripe fruit and honey were seasonal prizes. Crave salt, because salt was not always easy to find. Eat when food appears, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. Now those same ancient rules meet shelves of chips, candy, ice cream, fries, and drinks engineered to be easy to consume. Your brain is not broken. It is doing an old job in a new world. That is the uncomfortable mirror. The ancient diet was not pure, but the ancient environment had limits. Food came with friction. Food came with waiting. Food came with chewing. Food came with seasons. Food came with other people watching. Modern food removes much of that friction. You can eat alone. You can eat quickly. You can eat without hunger. You can eat food that has already been ground, refined, flavored, and softened before it ever reaches your mouth. Your body still reads it as opportunity. Your brain still says, take the energy. But the ancient emergency never arrives. So what did ancient humans actually eat? They ate diversity. They ate meat when they could get it. They ate fat when they could find it. They ate plants when they knew which ones worked. They ate roots, berries, nuts, seeds, eggs, insects, fish, shellfish, birds, small animals, large animals, honey, and cooked foods when fire and skill made them possible. They ate differently by coast, forest, desert, grassland, mountain, river, and ice. They ate with knowledge carried in stories and hands. They ate with hunger nearby. And they ate inside a world that did not care what they preferred. That may be the most important part. Your ancestors did not get to build an identity around food. They did not ask which diet was trending. They asked what the land allowed. They asked what the season offered. They asked what the group could safely share. The real ancient diet was not meat. It was not plants. It was adaptation. A body that could survive on many foods became more powerful than a body that needed one perfect food. That is why humans spread so far. Your ancestors did not conquer the planet because they found one magic meal. They survived because they could learn a new place. They could watch animals. They could test plants. They could follow rivers. They could cook. They could share. They could remember. And somewhere inside you, that same old eater is still awake. It wakes when the smell of cooked food pulls your attention across a room. It wakes when sugar feels comforting. It wakes when a shared meal feels safer than eating alone. It wakes when you open the fridge, even though you are not sure what you want. Maybe you are not only choosing food. Maybe your ancient brain is scanning a bright, cold cave, looking for energy, safety, memory, and comfort. Tonight, when you open your fridge, food may look simple, but the real answer is far stranger.